Today's sermon is a question box sermon, which means that you all have submitted questions that I am going to answer to the best of my ability, or I might just add some more questions to yours. And I want to start with two questions that came from one of our youth because they did such an amazing job in their youth service, and I know we are all so proud of them and happy to be in the same congregation with them. They ask, when is the most powerful worship you've been a part of? So many. So many. And what I know is that part of it is the worship planning, the worship events, the smells, the sights, the thoughts, the music. And part of it is who I am when I come to that worship. Sometimes I'm wide open, and sometimes I'm grumpy, and the worship is different depending on me, even if someone else is running it. I've been part of circles of women meeting in a place we called the Glade at night with stones for our altars and a fire going. Those were wonderful worships. I've been part of so many wonderful memorial services here where the spirit and presence of the person we are celebrating is just so palpable. And the love that people felt for them was so beautifully present. I think about a time at General Assembly in Boston where a minister was talking about those who had retired and his job as a minister over the years. It was in the place where the Boston Celtics play. And you know how they retire somebody's jersey and they hang it on wires and it goes way up into the rafters? Well, this man had a preaching robe and he had attached it to the wires. And when that robe swooped up into the rafters, I burst into tears because I had not been a minister very long at that point in a church. And I was just then becoming deeply aware to the bone of how complicated and difficult a job it is for so many. And just seeing that preaching robe retired was moving for me. They also ask, do you have any secret talents? Well, I am an off-the-scale extrovert. And really, if I had any talents, you would know about them. I don't know if you know that I have a second-degree black belt in American karate. And so I think my only talent that I don't really talk about very much is that I can break somebody's collarbone. That's not really something you want ministers to be meeting you with front and center. The next question I'd like to talk about comes from someone who asks, I often describe Unitarian Universalism by saying what it is not. No creed, no common belief, no required theology. So without using comparisons or negatives, what is the actual faith of UUism? These are great questions. I'm going to tell you some of my favorite things about what UUism is. I'm not going to pretend that this is a comprehensive list. Number one, every one of us has our own connection with the divine or the mystery. We don't need that connection mediated by a priest. We don't need that connection mediated by anyone who claims that they have a more special connection with the divine than we do. You, according to your own experience with the divine, can figure a lot of things out. Now, is it okay to figure things out? Yes, because, 2, we teach that you trust your own experience. You trust your experience. For example, I was always taught growing up that the original sin was pride. Now, what I noticed was that of almost all the women I knew, And many of the men, they and we did not have enough pride. It wasn't possible that pride was a big sin when so many of us just needed more of it. And so if I don't experience that as being a big sin, then I can say to whoever's preaching it that pride is an overweening sin. Sorry, I'm doing my Uncle Henry. We can say, not for me. Not for me, it's not. The other thing that's still connected with all this is that there is ongoing revelation. What does that mean? That means that the truth, as we can access it, is not closed up between the pages of a book. In other words, you don't have to look for everything you need to make a decision about in the pages of the Bible, say, which is the one that I was raised with. If I want to know what my position on reproductive freedom is, for example, this being a reproductive freedom congregation, so I'm going to talk about that, I don't have to look in the Bible to see whether it's okay or not for a woman to terminate a pregnancy. I can say, I trust my own experience. I trust my own connection with the divine. I trust that the more information we have, the more we can change our minds about what is right and wrong. I think that the other thing about our faith is that we can believe science and that we believe that people have the right to health and liberty and justice, and reproductive freedom seems to me to fit perfectly in there. And I'm not going to let anyone tell me that the book says you can't do it, because I know the more I find out about life, science, myself, you, the earth, the divine, the more I can make that decision inside my own self. Then, another of my favorite things is the affirmation of the beauty of the earth. I can listen to a lot of people who say, and this is their faith, and I don't want to mock it, but they say the earth is something to be transcended. You have to rise above your body. You have to rise above your physicality. You're nothing but a flesh pocket around your spirit, which is the closest to God. I don't think so. And I love the way that Unitarian Universalism makes room for us to believe that the beauty of the earth, the beauty of our own physicality, the beauty of nature, and its horrors as well, are all part of our experience of what is holy. Another thing is that we treat the words and deeds of prophetic women and men as sacred texts from which we can learn. I would like to expand that also, just because of my own experience, and that you can use your own life as a sacred text and learn from that. Because the decisions you make, the actions that your beliefs produce, those are well worth studying. I love that we affirm science, not as perfect, but as a system of finding knowledge that has great validity. I love that we also affirm using your brain, not only the rational part, but the non-rational part as well. I hope you can hear this rain that's falling down right now. Such a beautiful sound. My Uncle David would say, I believe the heavens are about to declare. I love also that we can say in this faith, I don't know. We can also say, nobody knows. When someone says, what happens after death? We can say, I don't know. And nobody knows. The Buddha said, where does the fire go when it goes out? That's as wonderful an answer as any I've ever heard. Another question says, we have our principles, ends, that's the goals of the church, our mission, and our faith practices. Would you say that these comprise a sort of UU theology, or that means something more or else to you? And I would say, I don't think those are our theology. Theology means study of the divine and the human and the earth and the relationship amongst those. Our principles speak to actions that would flow from our theology. Like if you had a good theology, then these are the actions that would flow. One of the things I love about the things I said we believe in is that we believe in science. And I know from recent news that bad theology kills. Really, it's a life and death idea. If your theology is that God is going to protect you from the virus and that if he really loves you, you're not going to get sick, you might die, because that is bad theology and that kills. Not respecting science is bad theology, which kills. Thinking that you're responsible for your children's immortal soul so that you have to chuck them out of the house if they're gay, that kills young people. The suicide rate among trans youth and even LGBTQ youth the suicide rates are so much higher than they should be, just because families have been told bad theology about what it means to be gay or trans, and that God is going to hate your family because of something that you were born as. I want to talk about beloved community now. And I think you'll be able to see the slide that says what we believe about it. And if it's not up there long enough for you to read it, I believe that it will then be in the comments as a link that you can study it on your own. Because beloved community is so complete. And it talks about justice for women, for men, for children, for folks of various ethnicities. It talks about justice for the black folks, white folks, native folks, Asian folks, all kinds of people, and it means everybody. So why are we focusing on Black Lives Matter right now? Because that is what we're talking about right now, because the terrible things are happening to Black, brown, and Native people. And there is a time when we are going to talk about smashing the patriarchy. For right now, we're focusing on our Black, brown, and Native friends and beloveds in the midst of this congregation. There are so many other questions that were wonderful. One of them was, what do you do with your anger? How do you use your anger? I'm going to talk about that next week. Another one was, how do we hold on to hope during this pandemic? I'll probably talk about that next week as well. So next week is anger and hope. I love you all. I'm so glad to be back in this pulpit, and I can't wait to see your faces in the Hangouts with the Minister on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm so proud of you for donating to our project to RIP medical debt so that we can try to wipe out the medical debt that's being carried by people in Harris County. So many people are just staggering under the weight of illness. And if we can take just a little bit of weight off of our brothers and sisters in Harris County, that will make us all proud. Thank you for being this congregation and for following its mission.